Gather around the hearth and hear a tale of old, of mighty kings and fierce battles. Sigtrygg Silkiskegg, or Sigtrygg Silkenbeard, a name that struck fear. A Viking lord who claimed Dublin's throne. Descendant of Ivar the Boneless, legendary warrior. Dublin under Sigtrygg was a bustling port. He yearned for more power and glory. He forged an alliance with Leinster, sealed with promises of plunder. The king of Leinster, Máel Mórda was a man of ambition, much like Sigtrygg. He saw in the Vikings a powerful tool to use against his enemies within Ireland. He sought to challenge the High King of Ireland, Brian Boru, a man who had unified much of Ireland under his banner. The alliance between Sigtrygg and Máel Mórda was a formidable one. The Vikings brought with them their fierce warriors, their long ships that could navigate the rivers of Ireland, and their experience in warfare. The men of Leinster, for their part, knew the lay of the land and the ways of their Irish foes. Together they posed a significant threat to Brian Boru and the fragile peace he had forged in Ireland. They launched raids into Brian's territory, testing his defences and probing for weaknesses. The land trembled under the weight of their combined armies, and the people cried out for peace. Brian Boru, the High King of Ireland, was not a man to be trifled with. He had spent his life uniting the fractured kingdoms of Ireland, bringing peace and prosperity to the land. He had fought countless battles, proving himself a shrewd tactician and a courageous leader. When news reached him of the alliance between Sigtrygg and Máel Mórda, Brian knew that he could not ignore this threat to his authority. He summoned his armies from every corner of Ireland, uniting the Gaels under his banner. He knew that the fate of Ireland hung in the balance, that this would be a battle for the ages. The year was 1014 AD, and the shadow of war fell upon the land. The day of the battle. On a cold morning, the 23rd of April, the two armies clashed on a battlefield near Dublin. It was a Friday, as the Christian calendar would have it, though no god, Christian or pagan, could have ordained such bloodshed. The air was thick with the smell of fear and the promise of death. The Vikings and their Leinster allies were a formidable force. They were arrayed on the field, a wall of shields and spears, their faces grim beneath their helmets. The Vikings, with their axes gleaming in the cold light of dawn, fought like wolves, savage and relentless. Their longships, beached on the shores nearby, served as grim reminders of the devastation they could unleash. Opposite them stood the Irish forces, a sea of emerald green and flashing steel. Their king Brian Boru, though old, was present at the battle, his presence a source of inspiration for his men. The clash of steel against steel was deafening. The ground trembled under the weight of thousands of men locked in mortal combat. The tide turns. The battle raged for hours, a chaotic whirlwind of blood and steel. Each side fought with the courage and ferocity of cornered wolves. The Vikings, led by Sigtrygg and his allies, fought with the fury of the North Sea storms. But the Irish, inspired by Brian Boru, fought with the heart of a nation defending its freedom. The tide of the battle began to turn when Brian Boru's son, Mórda, led a daring charge into the heart of the Viking army. He and his men cut through the enemy ranks, their swords reaping a bloody harvest. Mórda, however, was slain in the thick of the fighting, his valiant efforts ultimately in vain. And then a tragic turn of events. Brian Boru, old and weary, had remained in his tent praying for victory. A solitary Viking named Mórda, desperate for glory or perhaps driven by fate, broke through the Irish lines and stormed the king's tent, killing him. The Legacy of Clontarf. The Battle of Clontarf raged on, even as the High King of Ireland lay slain. They fought with the strength of 10 men, determined to avenge their fallen king. Finally, as the sun began to set, the Viking forces broke and fled. The Battle of Clontarf was a Pyrrhic victory for the Irish. Brian Boru, the man who had united Ireland, was dead. The Viking threat was significantly diminished. Sigtrygg Silkiskegg survived the Battle of Clontarf. Although the battle resulted in the defeat of his Norse allies and the deaths of many important leaders, he was not killed in the fight. He continued to rule Dublin until his abdication in 1036. The victory at Clontarf ensured that Ireland would remain a predominantly Gaelic land. The conflict weakened Viking power in Ireland, but Dublin remained under Norse control.